Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well today. Today, we have a very special session with Youssef Darwich on rigging and animation. I'm just not going to go into some fully fancy introductions and give Youssef the stage. Youssef, take it away.
Thank you, Ashraf. Okay. Um, can you see the PowerPoint? Okay, thank you. 1 second, let's a little bit zoom. Okay, so welcome everyone. This is, I think, the second class in the 3D art track in the Gaming Academy. Today we're going to be talking about 3D animation and rigging. Now, a little introduction about myself. I'm Youssef, aka Brotherhood of Battle on the Discord. Of course, you know me because I talk a lot. I'm 20 years old. I'm one of the winners of last year's GA game pitches. I got into the top 5. I'm also a computer science graduate. It's great. I love coding and programming. I'm a self-taught 3D artist. I started out with 3D modeling, basic stuff, but then I got into modeling products and animation and art in general. That's pretty much it. And I think, creating games combines computer science and 3D art perfectly. So that's why I really like creating games. And I like onions. I mean, they taste good. Why not? Okay, so this is just a random collection of my stuff. Please tell me if the internet is cutting off because it says it's unstable. Anyways, I do some environment art, some 3D models, and yes, that's the barbarian from Clash of Clans. I don't know why I did that, but yeah. Okay, the table of contents. What are we gonna learn today? So before we go over the table of contents, I just want to say that I want this session to be interactive. I want you to ask me questions. And also, please, if you can, follow along with me. Download Blender if you don't have it already, and download the 3D models as well. It'll be fun. It'll be simple. And I'm a firm believer that if you don't do something on the spot, you won't really learn it. So go ahead and download everything and follow along with me. It's pretty much beginner friendly. Oh, is the voice low? Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I was saying that the class is going to be pretty much beginner friendly. The only prerequisite is probably watching the session by Bassem. It's a really good one. I recommend you watch it if you didn't already. Just so you could know kind of how to navigate throughout Blender and how to select objects, move them, all of that. But that's pretty much it. Now going over the subjects we have today. First, we have keyframing and interpolation, a very basic concept in animation. It stretches over 2D as well. It's really important. So that's why I'm going to explain it at the beginning. We're going to go over rigging and animating, as in making our own rig from scratch, how to connect it to your object, and how to move the bones in the way that you want. And then we're going to animate a character. We're actually going to do a walking cycle. It's going to be fun. We're going to get an actual pre-existing character and make it walk. And then finally, supporting team, I can include this section, the class, because it's more technical. It's more of a how-to and not much explaining, but I still wanted to teach you from A to Z. So that's why we're going to export to Unity and see how it looks there. Okay, let's go ahead. Now, keyframes and interpolation. Now, I'm gonna explain this concept in probably the dumbest way, but I hope it gets the point through. Okay, so this is this is Steve, a very handsome man, as you can see. Yes, and this is a burger. Now, there's a dilemma. Steve has a party in 30 minutes. but Steve has to eat before going to the party because he's really hungry. So Steve must eat the burger before he goes to the party. Now what he does is at his current position, at the current timing, he sets a keyframe. A keyframe is like a checkpoint. It describes the state of Steve currently at the given time. So at the current moment, he sets a keyframe where he's not eating the burger. And at the 30-minute mark, he sets another keyframe or a checkpoint where he has eaten the burger. And you can see here through the beautiful model that at frame 0, he hasn't eaten the burger yet. But at frame 30, he has eaten the burger. So you can see that keyframe 1 and keyframe 2. These are both states that Steve can be in. Okay. And then there's interpolation. Interpolation is basically how you go from one keyframe to another. So does Steve eat the burger directly in the first 5 frames and then does nothing at the rest? Or does he eat slowly at the beginning? Or, there's multiple ways you could go from burger to no burger. So this is called interpolation. It's how you go from one state to another. So just to summarize, a keyframe describes the state of the object at a given time. And interpolation is how an object transitions from one state to another. We're actually going to go into Blender for now, just to show you how keyframing works. It's going to be simple, follow along if you want. I'm going to be opening just a new scene. Okay, so your Blender should look like that as well. Okay. So for the second sacrifice of the Gaming Academy, I'm gonna delete the default cube and then add it, because why not? Okay. So I'm actually also gonna turn on screencast keys. You don't have to do this. It just shows at the bottom of the screen here what I'm pressing, if you want to follow along. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually keyframe our cube here. So so Steve's state is defined by him eating the burger or not. But of course, in the 3D world, the state is defined by something else. And if you press the N key, and press on item here, you will see this is the state of the current of the object currently. So you have location, rotation, and scale. This describes what state the object is in, which is logical because we just added the cube. It's all 0 and 1. Now, if you drag this panel over here, this is called the timeline. This is used primarily for animation. We saw it in the PowerPoint. It's this bar at the top. It shows you the time and the keyframes. Yeah, so what we can do is first, let's follow in Steve's steps and add a keyframe at the very beginning. So you can hover over the location state and press I. I is used to add keyframes in Blender. So you can see it turned yellow. This means that there is a keyframe now at 0, 0, 0. And you can also see it down here in the timeline. This diamond shape, this is a keyframe at frame 1. Now, if you go to frame 30, let's say, or really any frame, but let's just go with 30, and you move your cube however you want. Okay, I press G, by the way, to move it. And then press I again over this location. You can see that now if I go back to frame 1 and press space, it goes from point A to point B. Okay. Now, you can also keyframe stuff other than the location. You can, for example, go for rotation as well. Go to frame 1, hover over rotation, press I, go to 30. You can change it also from here. Like you can press 90 and then I again. And now it rotates as it moves. Same thing for the scale. I'm just gonna do it because why not? and now it rotates and scales as it moves. Okay, so this is how you, this is just the basic idea of how to set keyframes inside of Blender. It's really simple. I also talked about interpolation, which is also really simple. So what you have to do is first select the first keyframe and then the second keyframe. Remember that interpolation is how the object transitions from one state to another. So that's why you have to select them both. And press T while hovering over the timeline. And here you can see the different kinds of interpolation that you get. By default, it's set to this Bezier curve, which is just a fancy French word for ease in, ease out. You can kind of see it here. I'm not sure if it's visible on the stream, but it's slow at the beginning and then goes fast in the middle and then slow again. Now, if you don't want that, pressing T, you can set it to linear, for example, and it'll just go at a constant rate. Same thing for, there's a lot of different curves that you could choose. Like let's go for the elastic one, for example. You can see it goes directly. There's a bunch of them. Try to experiment with them and see what fits your animation best. And yeah, this is the basic idea of keyframing and interpolation in Blender. You can do this to any object you want with any value you want. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, now rigging and animating. So you see all these characters in your favorite video games, but how exactly do they have those complex animations, right? Like so far we've learned only keyframing and interpolation, but how exactly does that apply to those kinds of animations? Or more precisely, how do they move? You see those different characters, whether simple like an Animal Crossing character with literally just sticks for limbs, pretty much, or very complex characters like God of War characters, which has very complex facial expressions, and you can see the fingers, how much details there is. So the way to move these characters is you give them bones, you give them a rig. So what is a rig? A rig is a set of bones connected to your character that can deform it into different poses. Now it's more of bone and muscle because it does give it structure, but at the same time it moves your character. So pretty much it's the exact same like any anatomy. Every bone kind of affects a certain area of your character and can move it through weights, which we will explain in a bit. And now, yay, Steve went to the party and can actually dance and have fun. You can see here, I moved his actual arm with a rig, which we will do in a bit. Not on Steve, unfortunately. Now, how to rig your character. Okay, so these aren't in order, by the way. Those are things you have to do throughout the whole process. First, record yourself. Make sure the topology is suitable for deformation. Line up your bones correctly and fix the weights of your bones. Okay, first of all, record yourself. So that sounds weird when I say it out loud, but what I mean by that is get references and try to capture the organic nature of movements. A lot of studios actually have adapted motion capture. If you've seen it before, they wear these kind of silly suits with points on them, and it can actually be translated into the 3D world, and the animation is just done. They just have to do some fixing and all that. This is also rotoscoping, which is pretty much the same concept, but for 2D. They trace movements instead of capturing them through a suit. But obviously, you're on a budget. That's why I tell you to record yourself. Or if you don't want to do that, find references online. I actually did do it and did a small demonstration here for a simple waving animation. So this is my arm, as you can see. So a lot of information can be extracted from it. You can understand a lot of things when you actually see the movement You can understand how your character bends, right? You can see where the joints are going to be. You can see if there's a certain rotation that happens with the animation. You can see how far your character extends. Like for example, here I realized that the hand kind of extends the movement further than the lower arm. So this is just stuff you analyze from the recording. And you can even go as far as going frame by frame for your animation and pinpointing where your hand goes and what it does. Now preparing topology. So if you don't know what topology means, it basically means the geometry of your object. So every object is made up of faces, vertices, edges, and topology is how those faces, vertices, and edges are structured in your model. Now there's good topology for rigging and there's bad topology for rigging. You can see this in this picture over here. Thank you, Bassam, by the way, I took this from your slide. You can see that this kind of, can you see my mouse, by the way? Okay. So you can see that this kind of model is bad because it doesn't really give space for compression and stretching. This is what essentially happens when you move your character. Certain parts compress, and certain parts stretch, which is obvious because when you, for example, bend your arm, this part will compress and this part will stretch. So you have to prepare your model for that. Now this model on the far left is okay since it's a bit, there's a bit more geometry, but this in the middle is kind of the perfect shape for a joint, like a leg or an arm. And you can see here it actually bending. So this is bad because you can see that this edge in the middle kind of goes towards the kneecap, while these on the sides go towards each other, creating this kind of triangle shape in the middle, which is bad. And it kind of messes up your rig at times. But this is good because you can see that the same thing is happening, but without that edge in the middle to ruin your topology. So instead, they're going towards each other and they're keeping a good structure to your model. Also, at the part where it's stretching at the knee, there's also a nice curve over here. There's a nice shape. So this shape is very much used and we're actually going to use it in a bit. Lining up bones, this is pretty self-explanatory. Look at pictures of anatomy sometimes to understand where bones go. And yes, there is a bone in his beard. And I put this picture specifically because you don't have to abide by actual like anatomy. Anything you want to move, put a bone in it. It's not mandatory to just put it in the body. You can put it on the beard if you want to move it. But also don't excessively do it. You don't want like, I don't know, 6 bones inside of the beard because there's not much to do with all of them, right? And don't underdo it as well. Don't put 1 bone for an entire arm, obviously, because there's joints there that you have to move. Yeah, so just, understand what joint you have, where it's gonna bend, and put it accordingly. And finally, setting weights. Now, we're not actually gonna be doing that, but because it's automatic now with the help of Blender. But what weights mean is that each bone has a certain territory of your character that it moves. Obviously, a bone in say your hand isn't gonna move your leg, at least not supposedly. So each bone has a certain map of red and blue. Red is gonna affect the bone is gonna affect the red parts mostly, while the blue parts doesn't affect it at all. And each bone has that. Okay, now let's head to Blender and actually make a wave animation. Okay. So I'm just gonna delete the cube that we had earlier. And I'm gonna add the arm from the 3D models I shared with you. So you can do that by going to File, Import, and since it's an OBJ file, go to OBJ. You should, okay, you should select the model. Okay, and this is what you should have. If anyone runs into a problem, let me know. Okay, so let's actually follow what I said in the slides. First, let's prepare the topology, or at least check it since it's already prepared. So if we select our object and go into edit mode here on the top left, you can see that this shape that I talked about, it's present here. So you can imagine this hand goes in this direction, it bends like that. And you can see that the port where it compresses, it has good geometry, and the port where it stretches as well. We saw this type of shape over here. Okay, so the topology is okay. It's not very complex. It's not a very complex 3D model, so it should be fine. Now lining up our bones, let's do that. So first, let's add our first bone. You can add that to Shift A, and then go to Armature and Single Bone. And you should get this shape. Okay, so this is a single bone. This is how it looks. It has a root at the bottom, and it has a tip. A root is basically where it moves from, and the tip is where you can extrude from, which we will do in a second. Now, before we start actually lining up our bones, you can go to this green stickman at the right. Press on Viewport Display. And here you can kind of define how you want it to look, because some people don't like this shape, which is okay, I like it. But you can press on Display As and change it to stick, for example, or really anything that you like. But I'm gonna go with the default. There's also another option which is called In Front, which is really useful. Turn it on. You can see what it does here. You can start seeing through your object and see the actual rig. So this is disabled, this is enabled. Okay, so now let's start actually lining it up. Just like a 3D model has an edit mode, bones actually also have an edit mode. But here, you can move the tip and the root. So if you press on the root and you move it towards the end of the arm, because that's where it starts. And then the tip, you have to move it towards the middle. Now you have to line it up well. I recommend you go into these different X and Y and Z views so you can see it from an orthographic point of view. Now if I go into X and then I line it up in the middle. You can also go into wireframe by pressing this button at the top right. So you see exactly where it is. Okay, and line it up. Once you have that ready, what you can do is extrude further. Extruding bones just creates more bones, but as children. So selecting the tip and pressing E gives you a new bone, but this is actually the child of this bone. What does a child mean? It means that when you move your parent, your child will move with it. And now for a third bone. Now, obviously, there's fingers here, but like I said, if you don't have any use for the bones, there's no need to add them. So it's just 3 bones. And that's pretty much lining up the bones. Okay. You can move the camera through view and then camera to view. Oh, it's the middle mouse. Click the middle mouse. Yeah. Okay. Hello. Okay. And then weights. So for now, our rig doesn't really affect anything in our object. It really just is another object. It's not connected to it in any way. So the way to add weights, you first select your object and then hold shift and select your rig. And now press Control P and you should get this menu. Now there's this option called with automatic weights, which is great because otherwise you'd have to actually define the weights yourself. So just press on that. And you can see the weights over here. If you press your 3D model, you go to this green triangle on the right. You can see that this 3D model is affected by bone 1, bone 2, which is respectively the upper arm, lower arm, and hand. Now, if I go into weight length, I just want to show you them. So this is what bone, the first bone affects. This is the second bone. As I explained, the red parts are the parts that it affects the most. And this is the hand bone. So we're done with the weights. It's fairly simple since it's automatic. So thank you, Blender. And finally, we can look at the reference to kind of understand what is happening. We're gonna do a wave animation, as I said. So now if we select the rig and go into pose mode, you can see that if I select one of the bones, it turns this cyan blue, and I can rotate it now. And the 3D model moves along with it, right? Because there's certain weights that make it move. Okay, so let's start now combining what we know with keyframing to the rig that we have. So as we did before, we go to frame 1. Let's go, bone by bone. So first, I noticed here, if you can see it through the recording, it kind of rotates a bit, like the whole arm, going from this default state into the waving state. So what we can do is first set the keyframe in the default state. So same thing, hover and then I. Go to say frame 30. Let's go 20. And then rotate this bone. You can see that the entire thing rotates with it. Okay, perfect. And then press I again. We're done with this bone. Now we can go to the second thing, the second bone. Go to frame 1, also I. Okay, now we can kind of study how it rotates. I kind of noticed also through the recording that this step goes really fast. So it goes directly like that. So let's give it a small amount of frames so it does it quickly. Say 10, for example. I press R and then I press Z twice because I want it to be on the local axis. Okay, this is good enough. Now let's see how it looks. Okay, it kind of looks weird, but maybe I have to move this a bit. Of course, it's all down to just how you want to tweak it and how you want it to look. Yeah, this is good. Okay. Okay, and then finally, we animate this bone. So same thing, at the beginning, you set the default. And then once it reaches the top, I want it to kind of extend further. As we saw also on the slide, it kind of goes further than the bone below it. So just rotate it a bit towards the right. and set a keyframe there. Okay, perfect. And now you can also like make it go back and like do a little wave. Right, so you can literally just have fun with it. Always look at your references, see how it looks in the recording. And yeah, you have your wave animation. If you want, if you did it, show me on the Discord. I would love to see it. Okay. Um, okay, now just a little break. Go drink some water or ask me some questions if you want. This is this is Lean's dog. Thank you. If anyone has a question, oops. Oh, oops. Okay. Can you repeat the weights plus anim thing I said? Yeah, I missed the last 5 minutes. Yeah, sure. I was looking at the automatic weights, how it adds them. Okay, I guess because look. So the way to add weights is very simply you press on the 3D model, then you shift, select the rig, and then Control P, and then press automatic weights. What that means is that it's going to calculate the vertices that are closest to the bone and add them to the weight and make them go red. And the rest it's going to be blue, meaning that it's going to affect the parts that are closest to it, and it's not going to affect the rest. And you can see this actually, you can see this play. This bone only affects the hand, doesn't affect the rest. Now, of course, this moves the entire thing because, like I said, this is a child of this. So of course, it's going to affect the entire hand. But in reality, it's only affecting the port that it has. Is that what you mean, Basim, or is there something else? Okay. Is there a way to see the frames separately? Oh, you mean for each bone? Yeah, there actually is. Yeah, so if you go to pose mode, back to pose mode, you select everything by pressing A or just shift select them all. And you press on this panel over here. It should be like that. There's a little arrow sticking out. If you drag it, you'll see summary, press on that. And you can see every bone and what keyframes it has. This is first bone, second bone, third bone. If you select everything, it'll all show. And this is the animation. Is that what you meant? Okay. Okay, if there aren't any questions, I'm gonna go drink some water. Okay. Okay, hello. Okay. Now let's move on to animating an actual character. Oh, okay. Let me turn on. لا هذه مش دغري الميكس. Okay. Yeah. So bone IK constraints. So this is gonna sound a bit maybe confusing, but it's okay because it makes life much easier, trust me. Now it's really hard to do what we just did to the arm to an entire character. You can imagine it's kind of to move the bones in a specific manner and also make the movements seem organic. So that's why bone IK constraints come in. They make moving bones easier. Now, this is actually a concept in robotics, which it just seems crazy, but this is in school, so I'm not gonna explain it in a physics point of view. I'm just gonna see, yeah, exactly. We're just gonna see how it applies to rigs. So there's forward kinematics and inverse kinematics. Now, forward kinematics, you actually already did it. It's a thing that has to do with parenting and children. So the idea is that if you move one, bone two moves, and ultimately it moves the hand position, right? Which we literally just did, right? But inverse kinematics is the opposite of that, as the name implies. You move the hand, and then ultimately it moves bone one and bone two, right? And we're going to see that. I know the concept seems a bit complicated, but luckily there's a way to do it inside of Blender. Then understanding and simplifying the movement. Now, this is a very important thing when understanding what you're animating. Try to simplify your movement always to the minimum amount of frames. So what I mean, like take a walk cycle, for example, okay? So there are all these different frames that go into a walk cycle. There's contact, recoil, passing, whatever, okay? But it's a bad habit to go from contact to recoil, animating wise. You don't want to animate contact and then recoil and then passing and so on. You always want to animate the main frames that resemble your movement mostly, right? So I usually go for the contact frames, like leg in the front, leg in the back, and then a second frame, it's the opposite of that. You might go for like a passing and a passing, but always don't go in order. Try to, as I said, work in iterations, meaning that first of all, you get the main keyframes, and then you move on to the details, the ones in the middle, go passing, passing, and then so on. Of course, it can be more detailed than that. There can be more movements, depending on how much control you want over your animation, but always work in iterations. Don't go step by step. So for example, let's say a jump animation. So you can simplify it into like 3 frames, which is, crouching down and preparing for the jump, and then you're in the sky, and then you go back down. Those are just very simple 3 animations, that 3 frames that resemble the animation perfectly. Despite the fact that you might have certain frames in between that you want to add details in, but that comes later when you go over another iteration and another layer of details. Okay, so these are the things that Blender helps us out with. There's a built-in human rig for bone structure. So there's no reason for us to actually create the bone structure ourselves the same way we did for the arm. There's also the Rigify add-on for IK constraints. You can also add IK constraints manually, but luckily there's an add-on which is built into Blender supposedly, so you should have it. Yeah, let's head to Blender again and actually rig a character. We're gonna make a little walk cycle. Okay, so this is Blender, and I'm gonna delete it. Delete the arm from before. Don't delete it. Show me on Discord if you did it. But now let's add the second 3D model that you should have. Import obj something. and click on snow. This is the name of the character. This is actually from Blender. They give it for free, which is really cool. Okay, so now we have our character. I'm gonna go into material preview just to see the colors better. You can hold Z and then go. Okay, now first let's line up the bones, but right now we're kind of gonna use a pre-existing rig, like I said. So same thing, go Shift A, armature, and then instead of single bone, you go to basic, and then basic human meta rig. Now it's in the wrong rotation, which is fine. We're just gonna rotate the character itself. So you can select the first part of the character, shift, and then select the last one. It'll select everything. Then you press R to rotate on the Z axis, and then 90. Okay, so have it in the same orientation of the rig. Okay, again, I'm gonna change the viewport display. Press on the stickman, green stickman, viewport display. I'm gonna put it in front just so I can see it better. Okay, and now I'm gonna line it up according to the character that we have. So first, it's obviously too tall. Let's scale it down a bit. I'm pressing S and then scaling it down. Okay, I think this is good. You can always check the shoulders and the chest. I think this is good. Okay. And then you wanna also do something called apply scale. This isn't related to animating, but you have to do it so that it doesn't mess up. So press Control A and then scale. What that does, by the way, it changes from 0.8.8 to 111, which kind of normalizes your rig. Okay, anyways. Okay, so let's go into edit mode and line up the bones. So first, I recommend you go into this Y view, so you see exactly where the bones are. And also turn on this X at the top. Do you see it? This means mirroring. So basically, when you move one side of it, the other side will move as well. And let's start lining up. Make sure it's at the joint. This as well, at the wrist and the hand. The legs as well, they're a bit short. So you can just select and drag to select those. And move the kneecaps a bit, I think. Yeah. And a bit inwards. Okay, I think this is good. Now go into like the Z view. It's always good to check it from all the axes. Go into Z view. This needs to be inwards. Okay. I don't think I'm done with mine. Looks good enough. Okay. So previously, when we were doing the arm, we selected the 3D model, and then we shift selected the rig, and we did the Control P thing. But this time we're gonna use an add-on. Now, if you don't have it enabled, you can go to Edit, Preferences, and type in go to Add-ons and type in Rigify. It should be enabled. And for some reason, if you don't have it, you can just simply download it and press install from, I think it's on the Blender website. So anyways, if you have it enabled, you can go to this green stickman and press on generate rig. Now this will give you this weird, I don't know, it doesn't look like a rig, but it is. It's a better version of the rig we have. It gives you a lot of more control, a lot more constraints, like the IK constraint. And now we can do the exact same thing we did to the rig previously. We can select everything. Okay, so select all the parts of the object you have. And then lastly, select the rig, shift select, and Control P with automatic weights. Now this could take some time because it's a lot to process. But once it's done, we have actually our weights. You can see them. Yeah, you can see how it affects it the exact same way because this is a rig, just a better version. Anyway, now we can go into the pose mode of this. And this is the true beauty of Rigify. It offers so many different controllers. So first of all, there's this main controller in the middle that moves the entire thing. So you can literally go crazy with it. There's this controller for the hands and the feet. This is the IK constraint that I was talking about. Like I said, here, moving the hand moves moves bone 1 and bone 2. And you can see this here. If I move this, you can see how it naturally bends. Now, if we didn't have that constraint, we would have to actually animate each bone individually, which is really tiresome. So yeah, that's cool. We have some different controllers. I know it seems complicated, but it's really, we just have to use like 5 things out of all this. The hand controllers, the thing in the middle, the cube, and this shoulder also, shoulder controller. Okay, perfect. Let's actually combine everything we've done so far and keyframe those controllers that we have. Okay, I'm just reading the questions. Oh, it's okay. So you have to, so you have a rig, armature basic. You have this so far. You go to this green stickman, you press on it, and then you should have this port. And then you press generate rig, and you should have it. If you don't have this part, that means the add-on isn't active. Did it work, or do you need more? Okay. I'm gonna move on if no one has any more questions. Okay. So now we can actually keyframe those controllers. So going back to the reference I have here, we're gonna create the first contact and the second contact. Oh yeah, I think it's an error in installing it. Or I think the version is wrong. I don't know, it has some problems with that kind of stuff. We can debug it if you want after the session. Anyways, I'm gonna do the first contact frame. Going into X view is useful here. So you can select the first foot controller. Okay, and put it in a position just like the reference. Yeah, this is basically just following the reference. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good to understand. It's also a good idea to add like a plan or something under it, just so we know where the ground is. Shift A, mesh. Okay, so the plane isn't visible because it's too thin, so I'm gonna go into edit mode and extrude it a bit. Okay. Okay, so this is our first, we're gonna go to the first frame. We're creating the first frame. And actually, instead of pressing I like I did earlier on each of the rotations, I'm gonna turn on this thing, which is like a record button. You can record the motions you're doing. So for example, if I put this, it'll directly catch that I moved it. So this makes it much easier. Same thing for this. If I rotate a bit. Okay. And then for the hands, I'm gonna go into Y view, move it, pressing G, and then rotation. And the hands go opposite to the legs. So this is supposed to go in front. Give it a little bend. Okay, and on the other side, rotation, move it, and this goes in the back. Okay, so we have our first frame. Now also have some subtle details, like for example, the shoulders moving. This is the controller for the shoulders. You can move it a bit towards the side, which gives it a nice touch. It's always good to kind of move everything in the rig and not keep something static, because it just makes it very robotic, and it makes it kind of ugly. So always move everything. I'm also thinking about moving the entire thing, a 3D model, and kind of bob it up and down as he walks, just to give it a more organic look. So drag it downwards a bit on the contact frame. Actually, the slide needs to go a bit further. Okay, so we're basically done with the first contact frame. Now let's go, for example, to frame 30. And let's create the second contact frame. It's the same thing, but just flipped. So just move this here. Give it a bit of variation. Don't go exactly the same positions. So it's nice to make it a bit different. Okay, this goes in the back. Sorry, I was checking for questions. Okay, and we're pretty much done with the first iteration of the animation. We created the two frames. And now I'll do something just to loop the animation, because if we're gonna export it to Unity, we want it to actually loop nicely. So instead of 250 frames, I want to set the end frame to 60. Actually, I think this is a bit slow, but it's okay. Okay, so set it to 60, and then select all your frames from the beginning, only the beginning ones, and then duplicate them, Control D, and put them at the end plus 1 frame so that it loops nicely. I actually just did that for the arm. You can press A to select everything and do the same process. Okay, so select all of them and then move them to the end. Now we have a very kind of stupid 3D animation, of course, because this is just pretty much 2 frames. Of course, we're gonna have to add some details. I'm gonna make it just a 4-frame animation. So just the passing, I'm gonna add the passing frame. So let's see. Okay, so this leg is going forwards. So this is the one that's passing. Okay, now in the middle, like I said, work in iterations, meaning that, okay, you have those main frames. Now go in the middle of each one. So now instead of 30, we go to 15, and we put a keyframe here. Okay, and then go to 45 and do the same thing for the other leg. Okay, and we have a very basic walking animation. Also, like I said, try to not leave a lot of parts of your model static. So what I recommend is on the contact frames, make them bob a bit down, and then make them bob a bit up, and the same thing. Okay, and at the end, make sure to select all the beginning frames, put them at 61 so that it loops nicely. And this is just a very basic walk animation. So congratulations. It's not very nice. I expected better from myself, but it's okay. Yeah, so that's pretty much yep. Okay. Now for the final part, it's gonna be, like I said, more technical rather than explaining. I just want to show how to export it into a different export it into Unity. We're actually gonna export it into FBX if you're familiar with the format. So what you do is first, okay, first select everything, select your character, all of it. So select the first part, shift, and then select the last part. And also your rig, control, then select. Once you have all those selected, you can go to File, Export, File, Export, FBX, and then basically follow these things that I put in the settings that I put in the PowerPoint. So you only want to export the selected objects, not everything. You want the armature, which is the rig, and the mesh, nothing else. You also the Z forward is we're exporting to Unity, which has a different system. Apply transform, and disable add leaf bones. It's like a thing that happens when exporting. Leaf bones are added to the ends of the rig, which you don't want. You only want to export only the form bones, the ones that actually deform your character. And once you're done with that, you can pretty much export it. Let's export as snow. Okay. Okay, so we're pretty much done with the class, but I do want to show you how it looks instead of Unity. Sorry for messy desktop. Okay, so simply plug it to your assets instead of Unity. Okay, and then drag snow into your scene. Now, of course, you can create different idle animations and all that to your character, so that you can transition between the idle and the walking if you add a 3D controller. And yeah, if I click on this arrow over here and I click my animation, I should have moved it, but it's okay. And I drag it onto my character, this will create an animator. Now I won't really explain what an animator is because it's not in the scope, but it's something that plays the animations inside of Unity. And you can see if I go into animation tab, Walking. Nice. You can add a controller, a movement controller to it, a camera, and you pretty much have a game with nice animations. Okay, thank you. And show me your stuff on Discord, please. If I'm doing.
Thank you so much, Youssef.
No problem.
Does anybody have questions?
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that was honestly great. I'm so surprised. Like أنا ما كتير بفهم بال 3D stuff, but that was really quick صراحة. That was really nice.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Okay, as no one has questions. That's
Okay.
great.
Seems like we're all good. Thank you so much, Youssef. It was really wonderful having you, and it was very informative. And yeah, like Youssef said, we would love to see everything that you guys do in the Discord. Send it on 3D art. It would be awesome to see. And thank you so much for attending the session, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed it.